So I switched over from gaming on my PS5 to my PC. And what really drove me over the edge really was when the PS5 Pro was announced. Because when it was announced initially, I was like, oh, this is going to be cool, a more powerful PS5 Pro. But then, we started to see games come out for it. Things like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And like they looked good, but they didn't look like that much better. And then when the PC release came for Rebirth, then you could see like, oh, there still is a pretty decent gap between PC and PS5 Pro. Now, I wasn't expecting PS5 Pro to be, as good as like a 4090, but there really was a small gap between the base PS5 and the PS5 Pro. I think, for Rebirth specifically, I'm trying to remember. I know frame rate was a big one, and they were doing some stuff with PSSR. But ultimately, I was just kind of like, Like, there really isn't much here to justify buying a whole new console. But at the same time, I was wanting to upgrade from my base PS5. Now, I already had some gripes with the PS5 up to this point, or just really console gaming in general. Stuff like how expensive it is to, pay for online. Everyone has a subscription now. You have to, either get Game Pass or you have to get PlayStation Plus or Nintendo's online service. And it just doesn't make any sense in 2025, let's be honest. It is just a way to make revenue, but like, what are you paying for really? Like, yeah, you get some free games, and the free games can be good, but the fact that you still need those services to play online is ridiculous. But, when I was thinking about switching from PS5 to PC, I really had two major hangups. So, like, I was already on board with, building a PC, because I've built PCs before. I just never fully embraced gaming on PC. But the biggest hangups I had was, I guess number one is that it definitely needs to be powerful, more powerful than a PS5, by like a good margin. I still like collecting physical games, so that was difficult because I like to have a shelf full of my favorite games. As much as having a full Steam library is cool, it's never going to compare to having, shelves of games. Like, it's just a different thing entirely. And to be honest, this one's a little silly, but I don't know if anyone else is going to relate to this. I really like the PS5's UI, and especially when you compare it to Steam's Big Picture mode. Like, Big Picture mode is a bit utilitarian. Like, it works, but it's not very pretty or polished. Whereas the PS5 is very polished, but I feel like it's just as functional. I just think it's a clean-looking UI. I wish there was some sort of equivalent to that on PC. But obviously, it impacts your gaming experience on like a peripheral level, but it doesn't actually impact the gaming experience, so long as it works, so long as you're able to use the UI to launch games and, look at your screenshots and that kind of thing, it's fine. And so, when I was thinking about building a powerful gaming PC, I was thinking about those things. And, the UI, I was like, I'll get over that. That's fine. The biggest thing was the physical games. And eventually I was like, well, yeah, I could have the physical games, but have a worse gaming experience. Or I could, let go of the physical games for the most part, but have a much better actual experience playing those games. And so ultimately I decided, like, I think I'd rather have the better experience. At the very least, let me try it out for a while. And, I still have the Switch 2. I still have retro consoles that I collect for. So it's not like I'm never going to get physical games ever again. But, as far as, like, most of the big AAA releases, stuff that can take advantage of the power of a, high-end PC. I'm going to be playing that on PC, so I'm not going to have the physicals for that. But, let's say like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 came out day and date, PC and PS5. I know it's not, but just hypothetically, like I would double dip for that. I would get it on PC and I would get it on PS5. Like that's just how I would do that because I'm dumb and I need a physical copy of my favorite games. But it's kind of like that. Like you could just get physical copies later if you really want to. But yeah, I so what did I end up getting for my build? So I ended up getting a 5090 and a 9800 X3D for the CPU. So that's like overkill. That is, it's literally the highest end parts you can get. Now, I mentioned this is not my first PC. Like I've had PCs before. So the PC I was coming from was a 3070. I can't remember what CPU it had. I think it was a Intel Core i5. Maybe it was a 12th gen CPU. I can't really remember. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, the fact that there was a significant upgrade from PS5 to my new PC helped a lot. It really made it feel like, okay, it's worth going to this new platform because look at how much better my games look. Whereas when I had the 3070, I built that after I got my PS5 and it was like, yeah, it looks better in some games, but it's more or less the same. And PS5 is just more convenient, so I ended up playing on PS5 back then. But yeah, with the 5090, it's like, it's a completely different level. And, I have this, I think it's a 43-inch OLED in front of me. I use that as my monitor for my PC. And, games just look incredible on there. And, the screen goes up to 144 hertz, which, you could argue is too low for a 5090. But, for the type of games I play, like Final Fantasy Remake and Rebirth are capped at 120. Most AAA single-player games kind of struggle to hit those crazy high frame rates anyways. So, I wanted a big screen for the immersion. And so I was willing to go lower on the hertz of the screen. Especially because, 120 and above, I'm chilling. Like, yeah, obviously, like, having a crazy high refresh rate is cool and it's nice, but I wasn't too hung up about that. I was really in it more for the picture quality and the resolution. But, yeah, in the modern gaming landscape, there's just no exclusives. So if everything is coming everywhere, you might as well, I'm not saying you might as well play on PC because obviously there are some benefits to playing on console, depending on the person. But what I'm trying to say is there's nothing tying you down to a platform as much as there used to be. So if you have a favorite platform or a preferred platform, you can just play pretty much everything there except for Nintendo games, which is kind of sad in a way. It was kind of fun to get each different box, and each different box had its own identity, and you would do certain things and play certain things on those boxes. But, I think between the PC and the Switch too, like that's a really nice balance. And, I still have my PS5. It's not like I got rid of it. Like Ghost of Yotei is coming up next week, and I'm going to be playing it on PS5 because I'm not trying to wait a year to play that game. Like, I want to play it now. So I'm not saying the PS5 is completely useless for me or I'm never going to touch it again. But yeah, it's definitely not my preferred place to play anymore. I think, it's difficult for me to speak on money because I built this crazy PC, but, Sony really has been nickel and diming us over, the price of controllers and other peripherals. And I know everything's getting expensive, but it does feel like there's a bit of a Sony tax now in the same way that there is a Nintendo tax. Um, and yeah, it's just, again, having the flexibility on PC to get whichever controller you want, whichever mouse and keyboard you want. Um, it's really appreciated, I think, in a gaming landscape where options are being limited and budgets are being stretched. Again, even if you built like a lower end PC, honestly, it gets a little tough in that range just because you are going to be getting similar to PS5 performance, if not worse. You might just be better off with PS5. Like, I think consoles still have their utility, but their utility really shines in their price to performance ratio. Like, consoles need to be cheap enough to where it is a steal for the amount of performance that you get. And Xboxes are like, I think the 2 terabyte Xbox Series X is like $850. Sony just raised their prices. I don't know what the PlayStation's at now, at least in the US. So that whole kind of ethos of a video game console is kind of going away. I think Nintendo is still keeping their console at $450. Oh, I guess $450 was for the bundle. So yeah, I guess once the bundle, the Mario Kart Tour bundle runs out, that's gonna go up to $500. Yeah, it's expensive out here, man. I mean, I'm saying this with a 5090, but it's expensive out here. I think that, the 5090 is kind of always going to be there as like the top end option, but everything below is just kind of screwed up. But yeah, as far as my experience with PC has gone so far, it's been flawless. Yeah, part of that again is because of the 5090. Like, I was playing Monster Hunter, whichever the new Monster Hunter is. I can't remember the name right now. I know it's not Monster Hunter Worlds, but Monster Hunter Wilds. I was playing Monster Hunter Wilds, and I was able to get good frame rates because of my 5090. It would just kind of brute force it, and even then, I was using the AI features of RTX, which, like, I don't want to do. That's just the only way to get those frame rates high enough while playing at 4K. Same thing with Metal Gear Solid Delta. It's like, I'm able to have an okay experience, but that's really not how it should be, And even for me, like, yeah, I have this extra power, but I don't want to use this extra power just to get the game to run. I want to have those resources available for ray tracing and other, bonus stuff on top. So, yeah, I mean, my experience so far has been good. Again, I still miss having physical games. I'm still buying physical games, like I do have Ghost of Yotei and Final Fantasy Chronicles coming next week. But it's obviously slowed down now that I'm downloading more of my games on PC. But as far as like the actual gaming experience goes, it's been flawless.